Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel. Hey, what is going on YouTube? It's the brain of the mainframe here, Nile Scala with the Pop XP, and I'm excited tonight because I've got two amazing guests on with an awesome book. And if you've seen the promo, you know that it's Dead Romans. And how I learned about this book was from my good friend Jim Valentino, who said, "Hey man, you got to check this book out." And when I saw it, I was blown away. This book is just unbelievable. And then so I was like, we gotta get these creators on, right? So I did my stalking, did a little bit of stalking, learned a bit about them, and I'm excited. I'm excited to chat with our two guests tonight, and I want to dive deep. We're gonna, as Steve Houston would say, we're gonna dive into the weeds a bit. So we're gonna get to know these guys, check them out. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen in the YouTube world, please welcome Fred and Nick Marinkovich to the show. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey man, that's a great intro. That was so cool. As soon as
It
I
is.
saw our faces, yeah.
I've always wanted to picture myself like that.
You're creating the books. You need to be the Roman soldiers marching in with a force to be reckoned with.
It definitely feels like that sometimes.
Does it?
Yeah.
Fred, man, it's so great to have you on the show. Nick, really appreciate you guys coming on. And I was talking with Jim Valentino, and he had mentioned your guys' book and was like, "Man, you got to check this out." And guys, insane. My response to him, I'm going to tell you right now, this book better win an Eisner.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
it is.
that would be acceptable. Yeah.
The interiors are incredible. The story off the bat, I had the, obviously you guys sent me the first issue. I read it, and now I'm drooling, bro. I am drooling for issue 2, man, because you just set it up where it's like anyone that gets issue 1 has to go and get issue 2. You just left us like, what?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good ending. And it's interesting, when I wrote it, I was keen to see how Nick was going to draw it, and I was thoroughly pleased when those pages came across, especially with that last panel in the book. I think that really seals the deal. Yeah.
The last one at the very end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't even talk about it.
No, they'll have to see it when they purchase it on March 22nd. Is that when it
Yeah.
hits stores?
13 days. My wife has been quite vocal on the topic as of late.
That's awesome. Well, before we dive into the weeds a bit, as my buddy Steve Houston from Torpedo Comics would say, I want to get to know you guys. I've never had you on the show. I stalked you guys a bit on the internet there. But starting with you, Fred, man, you seems like you do a lot of different things. I'd love to hear about that. But I'd also like to hear kind of like your origin into comics and how you got into writing.
Okay, I do a lot of things. I work on the radio, and I work on TV, and I do voiceover, and then I do TV writing and commercial writing on the side. I got into comics when I was a little kid, and because we lived in Belgium, so I read Lucky Luke, and which I always just called Lucky Luke because that's how you say it when you're in French. And so I loved that book, and I loved Asterix and Obelisk. And when we moved to Canada, it was during the summer when the Infinity Gauntlet was coming out, and I used to hang out by the Street Fighter 2 machine, and I would read comics there. And that was, I remember, the big moment where I really started reading superhero comics and all that stuff. But yeah, and then I kind of moved around and read comics, and I fell out of it because I didn't have any money. And it was there was this comic shop in Edmonton called the Happy Harbor, which was nominated for the Eisner for best comic shop 6 years in a row and never won.
Wow.
And I remember I got an autographed picture of Susan Lucci to give to the store owner, Jay, and he hung it on the wall. But that store and that guy in particular got me back into comics. And I started reading Why the Last Man, but there was always ads for 100 Bullets, and I liked Why the Last Man. I really did. But reading 100 Bullets got me back into comics as an adult. Yeah. And then I flash forward all kinds of years. I meet Nick, and then we're doing Dead Romans. And that's that. There we go. Oh, and I got to mention Adam Gorham, because Adam Gorham was the guy that I did my first real comic with, and he's one of the best human beings on the planet. So I feel like if I don't mention Adam Gorham when it comes to comics, I'm an idiot. And
does a lovely cover for us as well.
Yes, one of the ones that you showed is another reason I got to bring that up. It was his variant you put on there.
Oh, very nice. Now, what's the previous books you did?
We did like just self-published stuff. This was like a decade ago. We did a series called Teuton, which is this historical fantasy story set in the Northern Crusades, and we got like the Lithuanian pantheon of gods involved, and it's sort of like the Norse deities. There's a lot of similarities, but it's way darker. Like there's 3 different gods of death. There is a god whose only function is to murder other gods for hire. And he was like a warlord that sold his soul and was tricked by one of the gods of death. It's really cool. The stories are really cool, and we sort of crafted it into this conspiratorial tale with the Teutonic Knights and the pagan warlords that lived in the area. And it was a pretty fun story to do at the time. And I always like tease that one day we'll redo it, and we'll do it big time with all the things that we've learned from. So yeah.
Hey, maybe this could be the launch of it, right?
Hopefully.
Hey,
yeah.
You never know. Now, Nick, man, I'm putting the spotlight on you. What's your origin story into comic books?
Origin story. I had an older brother. Well, I have 2 older brothers, and I both contributed to this obsession into comics when I was a little kid. And one used to collect, so I would manhandle his books, which drove him crazy and everything. And that got me into the superhero books when I was a little kid. And I would in grade 5, grade 6, I'd be drawing, and I was totally copying like John Byrne pictures and stuff like that. The X-Men, Fantastic Four stuff he was doing. I love doing that stuff. Mike Sack, I was really into that as well. I really loved his sense of anatomy. Anyway, then you cut to like, high school, I'm still into it. By university, I've kind of like lost touch with it. You're off, you're doing other things. There's no comic book stores around, so you kind of forget about it. And then I get back into town. So I was away for school, and I got back to town, and an old buddy of mine reconnected with me, and he's like, "Hey man, we always talked about getting published when we were kids. You want to try?" So we just did a few, like 5 sample pages. I think we did it was like Son of Satan. What's that character's name again in Marvel? It totally escapes me at the moment.
With all the lines and whatnot, the Mephisto guy that looks all like
not Mephisto,
not Mephisto, but like his son. Wasn't he in the Ghost Rider movie?
I think so.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about because he was in the Marvel like Children of the Atom game, but I forget what the name of the character is.
Anyway, it was a pretty arbitrary decision
Blackheart
to choose that character.
Something like that. I don't know. Keep going.
But anyway,
yeah, that's it. We'll go with it.
Yes, that's it. Let's go with that. And anyway, no, we went to I think it was like a fan expo, or Paradise Comics used to do a show back then, and we met Yannick Paquette back then. And he was really cool. He's like, "Guys, man, this is good stuff." And he took a bunch of our pages, and I mean, people are nice, and you kind of think, "Okay, that's great. That'll hear anything." And 3 months later, we get a call out of the blue. "Hey, we're doing this book called Underworld for Sony Pictures. Are you guys interested in handling the art for it?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." I'm really experienced, having never done a book in my life, professionally. And I literally that day I went out and bought a graphics tablet and quickly figured out how to use as soon as I signed a contract, went out, did that. And yeah, man, like 2 months later, that book, it was for the film, the first Underworld film, which IDW produced. And that's how she goes, And ever since then, I just kind of fell into it. And then just kept on going. And you know, back then actually, things went like really fast. It was like that, and then we did a follow-up series with IDW. Then I did a series for Devil's Due called Nightwolf, and then we did a Marvel project called the Hulk and Fantastic Four, back when the Fantastic Four movies came out. And then I took a break from comics, you know, because it was just I really hopped on too much all at the same time, and it was kind of driving me crazy, and I kind of burnt out. And then I wanted to do like video games and things like that for a while. So, you know, yeah, that was my break.
You know what's funny about you saying the IDW stuff is just a few weeks ago, like I got a tweet from somebody, and because they had seen art, and they're like, it reminds me of this IDW book I read like in the early 2000s. Like, you're not going to believe this.
Yeah.
But that might have been Nick's work.
People still ask me about that today, you know, and the funny thing is, like, you know, because it's like your early stuff, I look at it and I cringe at the artwork. But, you know, no, I get still asked all the time, and, you know, it's, hey, whatever, it's cool. You know, people dug it, and that's cool, right?
That is
I
cool.
think it's cool.
Yeah. You know, it's always funny though. You look at, like, you know, I'm an artist myself, and you look at the stuff you've done, you know, years and years ago, and you're like, oh my God, that's horrible. Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's just because the craft evolves. Like, it's like any trade. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And I have to say, man, this book is just unbelievable. I'm so in love. My buddy Billy Tucci, I do this channel with, and I was like, dude, because he's like, bro, you don't have time to draw your book. You know, he's like, you don't have time. You got to find an artist. He's been saying that to me for like 2 years now, and I'm like, I know I don't have time to do it. And the other day I was like, Billy, I know who I want to draw my book.
You just keep your hands to yourself, man.
No, I won't. But I was like, oh my God, this will be perfect for what I'm doing. But yeah, man, this is great. So what I'd love to know though is, you know, this is getting published through Image, Shadowline. How did you guys get involved with them?
Really, wasn't it just the old-fashioned way of sending out?
Yeah, I sent emails, but I don't even know if I've told you about this, Nick, about the way I was. I may have told you what I was doing, because I always would send out.
You tricked me.
No, I sent the pitch doc before, but with this, I sent out just the pages, and so I sent out just the pages, and I said, take a look. This is beautiful. And then I sent that to a bunch of different places, and I got more feedback with that approach than ever before. When I sent it to Jim, I sent it over just through the Shadowline submission thing. And then he wrote me and he said, he goes, you don't need to say it's beautiful. I'll know if it's beautiful. And I was like, well, I really played that one wrong. All right. And then
he's a tough cookie, I hear.
And then like half an hour later, there's another email, because I was at work. And so I was like, I checked my email, like, we'll deal with that one after. And then like about half an hour later, he's like, goes, this is beautiful. Send me everything you have. I'm like, well, okay. And I sent him everything over. And before the end of the day, he was like, listen, let's do it. Let's go. And so it was very, very fast. And the biggest issue for me was getting my finances in order to like figure out ways to make it happen. So that was the biggest hurdle. Honestly, dealing with Jim was incredibly easy, like incredibly easy. So I was really relieved at the process that we had. There was a few other places we sent the pitch to that I don't think that I explained the story well enough. And there was one editor at IDW, and she actually responded saying, listen, we can't take it. Here's why. And then I wrote back, I realize, and I'm not trying to like change your mind or anything, but all the things you're saying you want to see do happen in the book. How do I get that in the pitch without just writing point form, all these things happen? And she really helped me retweak the pitch of the book. And I don't, honestly, to this day, I don't know if that feedback, which was rejection and in a reply, like helped me land it with Jim. So I don't know, but
yeah,
the pitch pages we sent were strong enough to get to that point. And so that was the best part. Yeah.
Yeah, and when he he shared that we were doing this stream the other day, and he put in there probably one of the best compliments I think any creators can get is when the publisher says, I think this is the most beautiful book I've ever published.
He said that?
Yeah. I actually saw that comment, and it absolutely made me, tingly, because that's, high praise,
And
especially coming from him,
yeah.
And he's been super supportive, like I'm still, every time I send out a cover, I'm always a little bit anxious, like, I don't know,
Why, man? They're so dope.
Yeah, well, it's just me, man. It's constant insecurity level, right? But no, Jim's been great, and he gives me great feedback all the time, about how to open up the pages a little bit, from what I was doing at the beginning. And I was telling Nile earlier, I'm just wrapping up book 5 now. Well, Fred knows this as well, and I think it's the strongest issue yet in the series. Like, just it really comes, the first few issues, the characters are still gelling, and at this point, like, and I hate every page I've drawn right after I finish drawing it, but this one I was like, you know what, it's pretty good.
I'm really stoked to see, because we've been talking about those last few pages so much over the past few days, like texting back and forth about stuff. And I haven't seen it yet, but I can see what you're gonna do. I'm excited to see what I get in my email over the next few days, man.
I absolutely pepper Fred with like a ton of questions,
which I sometimes wonder if I'm not doing a good job explaining things in my script, or whether we're just like firing back and forth with ideas, because I feel like Nick and I have a very unique relationship in terms of the way that we're working. It's very conversational, and it's so like back and forth. I did a panel a few years ago with Scott Chandler, and he had this brilliant line which has changed the way I look at comics, where he goes, the writer tells the story to the artist tells the story to the audience. And from ever since, like, which is just a really simple little statement, but it's so true. Like, it's so 100% true, because the vision that I've got in my head has got to go through multiple layers. Like, it's got to go from there to my fingers, then to Nick's eyes, then to his fingers. It's very complicated. And so, like, having that back and forth with Nick all the time, I think is huge in terms of making the book look the way it does. Because we've changed stuff really on the fly. Yeah. So.
Oh, totally. And I will point out as well, like, when I first started with the first issue, because I had come off another project where I was adapting a screenplay to the book, and you're pretty much doing everything at that point because there's no panel structure. So I was plotting out all the panels myself. So I came into this project with that same kind of mindset. And then, but the further you get into it, like, when you immerse yourself and you kind of really see Fred's style of writing and the way he beats out the narrative, and I adapted, I'm like, don't do Fred. I don't know how to say this, don't just do Nick, do Nick doing Fred, and, and then it became so clear, and I thought it just worked better, like I started like plotting out, with his beat structure. And it's funny because when I pepper him with these questions, he responds the way he writes, Fred is a character in his own story, and
one of the characters that you haven't met yet is sort of me. Well, you made him me. You started drawing him as me, but with better hair.
Absolutely. With Dirk Benedict hair, circa like 1981.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Which is like, I love that show. Battlestar Galactica is one of my all-time favorite shows. And then he's like this. I'm like, absolutely. Why not?
Will we be seeing him in issue 2?
You will.
Yeah. Yes. Ooh. Absolutely.
I really like issue 2. I think that one of my friends that I believe firmly that this guy is going to be a huge household name. His name is Ricky Lima, and he's got a book called Undergrowth, which is on its way out from Top Shelf very soon. And I think he's got another book called Millennium Bomb. He's phenomenal, and he read the issue, and he's one of those guys that I can rely on to give me honest advice. And he goes, I love it because I'm firmly invested in the plot and I know everything that's going on. and you've dangled all these character carrots all over the place. And he goes, in issue 2, I want character. I'm like, that's it. You're going to get it. That's where it's coming from. It's all there. So I'm really stoked to see the reaction to issue 2. Because so far, there's this one specific sequence of pages that are really, really dark that happen in issue 2. And I've been in love with them. The dagger page with all the shenanigans, we'll call them. Like, that's like one of my favorite pages. I think that everyone's going to really like that. I've said it would go great on a shirt. Like, if we were doing shirts, like the one big central figure of this page would be perfect on a t-shirt.
Well,
so Jim, if you're listening and you want to do some marketing, let's go.
That was actually the first page I did of that book, because it just stood out to me. Yeah. And I don't know if you recall that book. I started off like at the end.
Yeah.
And then I kind of worked backwards, you know, trying to be cool. Anyway,
it is cool.
It wasn't cool at all.
Now, before I show off the book, some of the pages of the book, what was the inspiration for Dead Romans?
So
loaded
I always
question.
Pardon?
I said loaded question.
Well, I always wanted to do a story about Rome, and the Battle of Teutoburg Forest is one of the most, if you sit down and look at the nuts and bolts of the situation, it is one of the most terrifying ordeals you will ever read about, because you're dealing with like tens of thousands of people getting butchered, literally butchered, over 3 or 4 days. And it's in a swamp, in a rainy forest, during a downpour and a storm. And this whole massacre of like 50,000 people happens over a stretch of like 40, 50 kilometers. And so it's dense. So everywhere you go, imagine sitting in this swamp, and all you can hear around you are the screams of people being sacrificed. And I remember reading about the Battle of Teutoburg Forest in this like book that I had as a kid. I think it was like an Encyclopedia Britannica for kids kind of thing. And it was like stories about freedom and about things people have done to fight for freedom kind of thing. And I remember reading about like these tribesmen who attacked the Roman Empire when it was at the peak of the Roman Empire, when no one could defeat it. And I'd always wanted to do a story like that with the Teutoburg. And then I kind of put it out of my head because it's been told, everyone knows what it is. And I was talking with Teenie Howard about spoilers, and she said, it's not what happens, it's how it happens that matters. She goes, I know what's going to happen with Julius Caesar, but I loved HBO's Rome. And as soon as she said that, it's like the whole thing kind of like clicked in my head. I'm like, well, okay. And so I sort of was trying to find a way to create a good narrative about the events, and the rest sort of just happened, because I wanted to tell a story that didn't change the logistics of Arminius's masterstroke of a plan, because it really is absolutely incredible what happens. And I didn't want to change any of that stuff. I just needed to change, not even change, but just create things that could fit and work in that world that wouldn't affect the plausibility of everything else. That was the biggest challenge for me, really, as like writing the story. But in terms of like the impetus of creating the story and working with Nick, it was we met at the con, and I was terrified of him. And then Kalman Andrzejowski told me, that's the guy. I'm like, okay, that's the guy. And so I went to talk to Nick, and then we talked about it, and then we went up for drinks at Say What, and that was where like we didn't even really talk about money until the end. We just talked about the story and the visuals and what we wanted it to look like, and a lot of like what we didn't want it to look like, and then just all came from there.
Well,
so go ahead.
It's funny because when we had met at the con, but he didn't pitch me at that point. He just messaged me later on. It was like on, Messenger, Facebook or something. And literally at the time, I was listening to Mike Duncan's History of Rome podcast at the time. I mean, it's long, right? 20-minute episodes, but there's like hundreds of them. And I was like right in the middle, and I thought, I was like at the part with like Hannibal and Carthage, and thinking, oh, this would make a great story. And then he pitched, this other one in a similar context, and I'm like no, there's some kind of synchronicity here, let me hear this guy out, and I'm a total sucker for those moments.
It was meant to be.
Yeah,
there is a lot of similarities between like when you're talking about Hannibal Barca and his father making him swear that he will destroy Rome, and like whether or not that story is true, but this guy Hannibal crossed the Alps. Like Hannibal's father allegedly, after was it the Second Punic War, like told his son, like he swore that he would defeat Rome, and he's like 8 years old and decides I'm going to defeat Rome. And then the story about Arminius is around 8 years old when he was taken hostage by Rome, and allegedly his father told him, don't ever forget who you are. Don't forget where you came from. You go to Rome, but you're still one of us. And then when he comes back, it's like there's a lot of similarities when you're talking about like Hannibal. And this is his Battle of Cannae moment, really. Like when you talk about two terrifying situations, like the Battle of Cannae is just, that's pretty hairy stuff. I don't know if anybody like watching right now, like how familiar they are, but it's like you're talking about like industrial scale butchery of people. And you can almost argue that Hannibal's was worse but shorter, like in terms of the scale. But it's all pretty hairy stuff. I really would love to do more stories set in Rome. We'd love to do like a second arc of this book. So if those Eisner nods happen, well, that'll make that whole process probably a lot easier.
Right? Yeah. Now, I love history, man. I'm a huge history buff. I listen to all the podcasts. I've got loads of books, on Rome, ancient Greece, Egypt, everything. I'm just always reading this stuff. Now, when you're working on a comic book that is so focused on ancient Rome and stories of Rome, what kind of research goes into the story for you, Fred and Nick, to get the aesthetics just right in the book?
Nick, you go first because I was just talking.
Sorry,
bud.
Yeah, it was a deep dive for me because, especially when you're looking at Roman history, we're talking about arguably 1,000 years, depending on where you want to say it stopped, or whether you're counting the Eastern Roman Empire. And it's not all the same. It's easy for us to just lump it all together. Oh, this is what Romans looked like. Well, no, I mean, we're talking about a huge span of history, right? So, I wanted to be as specific as possible. Like, Fred gave me this timeline, and not to Fred, he was great. I asked him a ton of questions. He didn't just give me these bullshit answers. Like, he knew his stuff. Like I could tell that he had actually researched this because he gave me an in-depth response every time, which was like huge brownie points for you, man. Like, and like between that and, I mean, you should see, I have these huge archives of visual references for all aspects, like what did the Roman soldier look like? What kind of armor was he wearing? Specifically at that time, what kind of baggage trains did they have? What did a general's tent look like? I mean, it's we're getting into the minutia here, but you get the idea.
I want the minutia. Yeah. Were you going to museums? Were you doing, what kind of research went into this? Because I mean, detail wise in the book, I mean, it looks historically accurate.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's exactly what I'm going for. And yeah, I mean, there's stuff out there, there's a lot of.
We just lost his audio.
Nick, your audio, it's gone.
Tell your wife to get off the internet.
Okay, while Nick's audio is gone, I can he's gone. So Nick's audio is gone. Like I can put together the nuts and bolts of how I did the research.
Nick, log in and log out. If you can hear me, log in and log back in. Log out and log back in. Sorry.
There we go. Okay, he's logged out. I'll get back into like the research aspect of getting the book together. Mostly the biggest part about researching for the story for me was really just creating the characters first and then researching whether or not that character could plausibly exist. Nick, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go. Take it
Loud
over.
and clear.
Do you want me to finish my answer? Or do you want Nick to go back into his?
Well, finish yours first.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, I created the characters and I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to have unique characters that you haven't really seen in a Roman story before, but I wanted it all to work from a nuts and bolts perspective. And so I took a look at the main, you could say antagonist, but it really depends on what perspective you want to take in the story. Gaius Quintilius Varus, who is the Roman governor of Germania, and his life, because I feel, and I've mentioned this in other interviews, that I feel like he gets this bad rap as this incompetent buffoon, when in reality his only flaw is that he trusted the people that were close to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating that the world seems to only exist to make you adhere to the most negative traits. You can't trust people, you can't like people because they'll all betray you. But he just trusted the wrong people. And he believed in the infallibility of the empire. And taking a look at his character and where he came from, and how he was in Alexandria, and then he was the governor when he was in Syria, and he was sent there to quell multiple rebellions. And where did his legions come from? Where did his soldiers come from? Did he bring them with him when he went to Germania, etc., etc., etc.? And so we've got these characters like Regulus, who is a Praetorian guard, one of his bodyguards, that basically a member of the household, very close with all the things that are going on in his household. They understand what's going on. And he was picked up as who was a slave at auction in Africa, and they ended up needing him to refill the legions because of constant legionary shortages, which is something that was happening all the time. So it was like, the premise is like, you've been freed, not free. You're in the legions now. You'll get a pension. It's great. What more do you want? And so then when he's in Syria, and then you've got a member of his household, and she was Syrian, which at the time meant she was Hellenic. So she was actually Greek because she came with Alexander's people when he colonized all along the Mediterranean while driving out the Persians. And so then putting all these pieces together on the map and getting them into the story together and making them all work together, that was the funnest part. And it involved just a lot of research, just logistic researches. And there's some stuff that's very minute, tiny little details in the story that I don't know if they'll just get passed over. But I found out exactly where Varus lived when he was in Syria, and I incorporated those elements into the story in some big visuals. And I just hope that somebody that's that familiar with the subject matter will figure those things out. And I read so much about the fortifications that the Germans built in Teutoburg Forest and the things that they did to ensure victory. And those were the things that I was very adamant got shown in the story. To be honest, like, I almost wish there was we could do a behind the scenes documentary. About the things
I completely thought about that.
Yeah.
This whole time.
You're like traveling to the actual locations,
Yeah.
right? Going through the panels of the book. What?
I would love that. Like, I
That'd be
think one thing, and I don't know if Nick's going to bring this up, but one thing that we didn't do is we didn't watch Barbarians on Netflix.
No,
we couldn't do it.
Well,
And we had a conversation where each one was starting to type, and then a message would come through like, I can't type it. That's what I was going to say. We didn't want to watch it because we didn't want it to affect anything we did. And we didn't want to watch someone else's work and look for reasons to dislike it, because that can happen.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't ever want to be that guy, like, ever. Like, I don't want to be the person who's hate watching a show, because first of all, I love that they had the balls to write a story like that and put that together and commit to it with that much of their own money and to do it. And I love it. Absolutely. So I still haven't seen it, and I'm not going to watch it until the hardcover of Dead Romans is on store shelves. That is when I will watch Barbarians, and not a moment before.
But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When I remember when we were like halfway through this series when like those trailers came out, and I was just like fuck, you know.
I was so stressed. I got Curtis Weeb messaged me, dude, are you seeing this? This is your book, and I'm like, Curtis, don't say things like that. I can't.
No, I was like having a panic attack. I'm like, fuck, what are we gonna do now? Like, and I'm just, you know what? Hold the course. It'll be awesome, and it'll be ours. It'll be ours.
It's yours. It's your
ours,
rendition, right? And Herrenberg in the chat even put, like the Netflix show Barbarians, you'll love the story in comic book form in Dead Romans, Image Comics.
Cool. It's ours is very different. I'm just gonna say I think that ours is a very different tone.
Oh,
but
it
Nick,
is.
Go back about your research and
the minutia, Nick.
The minutia things together.
Right. Oh, well, interestingly, you mentioned HBO's Rome, and one aspect of that show, I mean, which was awesome, that I always loved is I remember. If you guys haven't done so, check the what do you call it on the DVDs, the actors interviews that they have, the ones with like
DVDs, Nick. What are DVDs?
I know.
What is DVDs? Analog forever, baby. If it was on VHS, I'd have it there too.
I got my set a while back, but who's the guy who does Titus Pillow again? What's his name?
Kevin McKidd?
No, not Kevin McKidd. The other dude.
Ray Winstone. Not Ray Winstone.
Oh, his was great, and I recall him mentioning how, like in the scenes in Rome, on this massive set that they built, when you see like an artisan like building something, those are actual artisans. It's not like they're actors pretending to be a blacksmith. They actually took legitimate craftsmen who know how to make these things and use them in the show as actual props in the show. Like I thought that attention to detail was kind of wild, and I was like, I want to do that in a book. Like put that kind of effort into it, because someone's got to.
Yeah. Well, speaking of it, let's bring it up here. I've got we'll go through a little bit of the digital here, and first off, I mean, this cover is just if this is on a shelf, I'm grabbing it. That's all I'm saying.
It's the jawbone. Everyone loves the jawbone.
Love it.
And that was like a last minute addition to it.
It's so good though. I love it so much.
The inspiration for this was Full Metal Jacket, if you remember the movie.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was just like, we want to do, and Fred and I, like, we came up with that idea simultaneously, like Full Metal Jacket. Mm-hmm. He's like, I know exactly what you mean. And I mean, I like to think I kind of captured at least that.
And you guys, you've got how many variant covers you have? And I have two other covers here that I loaded up.
There's 4 covers for each issues. Each issue has 4 covers, like 2 from Nick and 2 variants.
Yeah. And so this is Arminius. It's almost like a little, sneak peek at Arminius in his full Germanic king form, which you're not going to see until the end of the series.
Oh, a little teaser right there.
Exactly.
Well, honestly, I will say that, and I realize now, like, we have put so many like macro in the micro moments, like the full story in tiny little compartments, like throughout the whole series. And I'm really proud. Like I feel like we did a lot of box checking, and I have to say, I have to give a lot of credit to Allison O'Toole, who has been our editor and just like indispensable to me as a resource. And she's just helped me express a lot of things that I wanted to express, and would really push, what are you trying to get on the page here? And do you think you're getting it? What more can we do? Just sometimes you need somebody like that, just asking you, like, what do you want? Like, rather than saying this doesn't work, saying, what is it you're trying to do? Let's get more of that. I absolutely adore Allison to death. And whenever I do interviews, I always say, like, for me, it's me, Nick, and Allison, 100%. It wouldn't have been the book it is without this trio of people. And like, that's not taking anything away from Jose or Andrew at all. but like I'm talking about my immediacy. Like Allison and Nick were huge in making this book be as efficient with storytelling as it is.
Yeah, and right off the bat here, I mean, this first full page right here, I mean, just absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. That's actually a favorite page of mine. It was just when I felt, okay, this works. It really hit the mark. What I was trying to do.
And I posted this to Nick on Facebook the other day. I was like, dude, you're gonna, I'm looking at his art and everything, and I'm just like, man, if anyone could give Bill Sienkiewicz a run for his money, I mean, Nick is right there. I mean, look, just this double page spread. Just how incredible is this artwork? Like, I'm in love with the interiors in this book. They're breathtaking, like legitimately breathtaking. I have an inhaler. See me? I'm losing the air right now.
So that first page, man, like the macro and the micro, that first page is, you could pretty much from a like thesis paper in university break down the whole story in that page. If you can use some colorful language, like the elements are at play, like the element of insignificance against the elements of nature, the circling of the crows. Like everybody who is picking this up with any familiarity of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest is going to look at that page and know what these guys are marching into. And it's those crows, man. It's Odin's crows, Wotan's crows. It's going to crush them. It's nuts. It's all there, Nick. You did it. Bangarang. We don't even need to finish the book. It's all there.
You bring up Bill Sienkiewicz, and everyone likes to cite, New Mutants and Elektra with good reason because they're awesome. But I loved. Have you guys both read Voodoo Child, his Jimi Hendrix biopic?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely on fire when he did that graphic novel. It is just a dynamite piece of work, and every time I look at it, it just, I'm a giddy 10-year-old who just loves comics again.
Yeah. No, again, I mean, it's the story's great. There's a great buildup in the first issue of where we're going in this, and I don't want to give too much away. Because I'm previewing the book, but anyways, there's some elements that I thought were really cool in the design. If Nick, if you could just explain, like, what are we looking? So in the panels here, we've got a lot of like circles, right? Like, is there significance to all these different circles and tones and different circle shapes and spherical stuff in the panels?
Absolutely. I mean, this entire sequence is this reverie that Honoria, the female character, she's the lead character, that she's experiencing while in this, huge Roman column that's about, we don't know it yet, but it's about to get hit by a Germanic attack. And she's thinking back to the last night she was with her lover, who is, surprise, surprise, Arminius, the guy leading this attack. Spoilers, so I did want to create something of a dreamlike quality to the scenes, so I did kind of play with the panel structure, especially in these pages. Really I was just kind of playing with it, and I just kind of wanted to mesh it all together, because it's like when you're in a dream, there's nothing linear to it. Yeah. It's all just a series of images that you kind of contextualize.
Yeah, no, and that's the vibe that it gives, right? Is that you're in that dream sequence, like of the flashback of what's going on, and I picked up on that right away. But I just noticed all these subtle little details in the artwork that really just captured the emotion of what's going on in these two pages. And really, this really is a brilliant book, guys. I hate to keep saying it, but I mean, I don't really know what else to say.
It's awesome.
Keep saying it. Well, Fred. Oh, sorry to cut you off. Fred likes to always say, ultimately this book is a love story, and that's why I thought those pages were really important to nail, because that sets the tone for their entire relationship in this entire story.
Yeah. I 100% got to back Nick up on that, and anybody that has been in the situation where you're sending out pitches consistently, one of the bits of feedback you'll get when you're getting rejected is they don't know who the characters are. And I think that the core of these characters is on full display from the very beginning. You know exactly how these two feel about each other, and that desperate need to be together at all costs is on the page there. And I feel like you can get a sense of Arminius's anxiety because he knows what's coming and all he wants is for her to be safe. And that symbolic handing of the sword, like he's got these runes on his sword because to him, if you understand the nature of his character, your sword is everything. Your sword keeps you alive. It's like that classic moment in Conan when it's like, you can't trust anything. This you can trust. It's the riddle of steel. And he gives her the only thing in his life that he trusts. And there's so much impact and level on that. And the little, when you look at the detail on the page, like those little runes and stuff on his sword, like denotes this idea that he views his sword as something mythical, something more. And I don't think that people today can really appreciate and understand what that would be like for somebody who's lived and died by that sword. Like how many lives has that weapon taken? How many times has that thing saved his life? And he gives it to her. Like that's a huge deal. Like, and you could argue like from a classical symbolic statement of the sword being this phallic symbol of masculinity, he gives everything to her right there in that moment. And that happens right at the very beginning of the story, which should set the tone for the type of like emotion that you're dealing with.
Well, you and that's the tone you get, is you get that sense of true love, right? And he wants to do everything he can to protect her. And, you know, she doesn't want the sword, but he's like, you're taking the sword. you
like,
know, we're surrounded. Like, you're taking the sword.
Yeah, you don't get it, but this is important. Like
it's
like the mashed potatoes and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This means something. This is important.
Yeah, and R. Brugman says, I'm ready to purchase the hardcover. Will it be up for pre-sales?
Yep, it's ready now.
Yeah.
You can get it right now.
But again, interior is just, guys, incredible in this book. This really is a great book. I am really looking forward to, now that you said it's 5 issues total?
6
issues total.
Yeah.
Okay. You were finishing 5, right, Nick?
That's correct. Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, this is, I'm going to stop here because I don't want to go through the whole book. But I just wanted to get to this page right here, which I love. This is one of my favorite pages in the book. Damn, you just killed it. That's all I can say. I mean, this is great. And now with this story though, because I mean, this is like historical fiction, right? This is your version of the story that you're creating or playing it out in the way you want. Can you give us a bit about this story arc, so any viewers out there that are interested in picking up a copy, they can kind of get a little taste of what they're, you know, going to be looking forward to?
Nick, you go. I've been talking too much.
Sorry. Like in what context are
just kind of like discuss the story. If you can talk, I know we've talked about the history of it,
right.
You know, the inspiration of the book, but now this is your guys' story, right? This is your version of this story. So for the viewers out here, like, oh yeah, I know I'm familiar with this, I'm familiar with that, or I'm not familiar at all. What are they looking forward to with this series?
Okay. The thing that I really liked about it is, so you have the general idea of the whole Teutoburg massacre, right? But what I love about it is, so after the initial onslaught in issue 1, you know, we're left like, oh, what's going to happen now? You know, we end up with this small band of characters, a motley crew, if you will. And it's them essentially trying to get out of this German territory back to like the nearest Roman outpost. So meanwhile, they're essentially surrounded, you know, they're in the woods, surrounded by thousands of German tribesmen, all looking for them and killing any Roman they can find. And it's like, I don't know, for me, it's like, it's that little hero's quest that you love in every movie you've ever seen since you were a little kid, of this small band, you know, against all the odds, trying to achieve their goal. And that's what I loved about it. You know, I told Fred right when I was reading the set of scripts right away, you know, you love these characters. And I turned one of them into him. or him into one of them, rather.
If I talked about like the thing that I love the most about the story is there's a real sense of humanity in what's going on with these characters, and I would like to think that we did a good job of not focusing on the battle, but focusing on the characters that are involved in the battle, because at the end of the day, it is a love story, and it's Arminius just wants to find Honoria. That is all he cares about, to the point that he almost lets the whole thing fall apart just to be with her. And consistently, time and time again, he's got these amazing masterstroke victories. And while everyone celebrates, all he thinks about is the one person who is not there. And from my perspective, I believe that all of us at our core have this Grand Canyon-esque romantic streak. And I think that we're all poets. We just need to let it out, because once we find that one thing in our life that we can't live without, we will destroy the empires to find it. You know what I mean? And that's what it is.
I love it.
And there's a really great scene, and this is actually one of my favorite backstories of the comic, is that the ending was initially different. We changed the ending, and this, like, there was a lot of discussions back and forth about changing the ending, and we didn't change what happens. We just changed the way it happened, and the way we changed it to really gave an opportunity to put a lot of these things on the table front and center, rather than leave them in the subtext. And I'm really, and you know what scene I'm talking about too, Nick, like the very last few pages of the book, I'm really excited to see, because I think that you've seen all this horror and all this chaos, but at the very end of the story, like, your feelings get put on I think it's a really great bookend to the opening sequence of pages. I think it's fantastic. And like, working with Nick for as long as we've worked together, I'm almost visualizing the way it's going to look on the page, and I hope that my vision is close to what you do with it. But I'm stoked. I'm really stoked to see it all like come to its big conclusion. It should be great.
You know what? I got to tell you guys what I really love about this book, and really what I'm loving about you two as a creative team right now, talking with you, is I don't know your opinions on the current comic book industry market. You know, there's a lot of fans that aren't happy with the directions of, mainly like the big two stuff, right? Because it's the characters that people have known for 80 years and whatnot, and things change and what have you. And I personally haven't been a big fan of a lot of these books, just because I haven't been enjoying the stories. But what I do enjoy is books that are original, that are just created by people that want to tell a good story, and it's refreshing. And I can only attest to the first issue, because that's all I've have granted access to as of now. And I love it because it's a good story. You can tell it's a love story. It is just a good old-fashioned escapism comic book.
Yeah.
I'm not getting hit with anything crazy. I'm not just having people sitting at a table talking. Like, things are happening, things are building and developing. And the way the story is scripted and played out, the way the panel work is, the way the artwork is, like, I escaped for the minutes that it took me to read the book. I actually escaped into this world. And to me, I love it because I feel like so much of comics, mainstream comics, is missing that escapism, and what you guys are putting together is just brilliant. I can't say anything else better about this book, that this is a good escapism comic book that builds you up in the first issue. And from what you guys are talking about, I'm like really excited. Like, I'm ready to see this tale unfold. And who doesn't love a good romance comic when you've got Romans, right, and Germans, and there's slaughter, and the blood has to be spilt to get that love, whatever, like you were saying, that Grand Canyon passion. Nothing is going to stop you. And I mean, how great of a story to escape into.
There's one scene that, like, whenever you talk about escapism, and we actually had to get Jim to go to the top of the mountain with Image to make sure that we could do this, is because there's one variant cover that's going to be, I think this is a variant cover for it's the B cover for 2, with Ganascus and the severed head in the swamp. That's 2, right? And
that's 3. That's 3.
3.
Yeah.
So you'll notice when you get to the 3rd issue that one of the covers is a dude who's like holding an axe and a severed head in his hand. And clever use of shadow hides the fact he's totally naked. Yeah. And that is something that this is one of my favorite text conversations with Nick that I think I've ever had, where one of the things about these berserkers is they would paint themselves. They wouldn't wear any clothes. And then they would drink these mushroom teas, or they'd eat these mushrooms. And one of the things about these mushrooms is they call it priapism. So they were at attention. And so we've got this scene where you've got all these berserkers charging out of the woods that are totally naked at attention. And that is escapism right there. And you're going to feel like you're in another world, and it's amazing.
Yeah, but and you know what's great though is you're being historically accurate.
It is.
Now the critics might not think that. They might not think that, but you're being.
We had to ask Jim if that was okay, and
yeah.
He's like, "Let me check. I think it'll be okay. Just let me check."
Yeah.
I'm excited for that page. That's going to be a good one.
I mean, the Batwing didn't do too well.
Yeah, but, we're gonna have to do a double splash page for that one. It's going to be impressive.
Incidentally about that, you think it's a shock factor about these guys running, bare naked into the fray, charging these drones. I'm sure shock factor was a huge aspect to it, but apparently another aspect was, when you're getting wounds with a sword, it prevents you from getting fibers into the wound, which would cause the wound to go gangrenous. I mean, whether or not they understood that, I don't know, but I've heard that theory that was one of the reasons they would actually go bare into it, and it's a pretty good theory.
It's a great theory.
Yeah.
Whether it's true, I don't know.
We have
Keeps a clean wound.
The amount of conversations like this that Nick and I have had over the last year is astounding.
That's why you have to do your documentary now. The behind the scenes documentary.
When you're talking to other people, you talk about this so much that you just assume this is kind of like common knowledge. And then, you don't know if and then you see other people's eyes glazing over as you realize, oh, okay, they really don't give a fuck. But
we had like this big celebratory moment at the end of summer. Me, Nick, and Allison all went to see Hailung when they came. I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with the band Hailung. I actually did an interview with a Belgian metal podcast, and they were huge Hailung fans. And when I mentioned that, they're like, "That's so perfect that you were there for that." And I remember feeling when we were at the show, like I wanted to tell everybody, I'm like, "Yeah, you should read our book, guys. We're pretty much all of this. This is our book. Like this show is our book. You'd all love it. If you love this show, you'll love our book." It was so like I was so wanted to yell it from the rafters, because it really did fit. Like that was such a fun night. We took so many pictures of the show. And then if you ever get a chance to see Hailung in concert, anyone watching right now, go. You will not regret it. It is an amazing musical visual experience.
It's an experience. Exactly. It's an experience. That's the only
I'm not familiar with it, so that's going to be like the thing I'm Googling.
Yeah. Hailung. You won't forget it. It's so great.
YouTube right after this, and you'll be like, okay, I get it.
I'd put it up now, but I'd probably get some type of copyright thing.
Yeah. But it's funny because we got really into this one band together. Like I was familiar with them, but then I started watching their videos of the live performances, and I was sending Nick all these videos, and it's really, really solid and on point, and the acoustics match with the visuals quite well. I think
Maybe you can work
And
out
actually,
a soundtrack deal. There's some
Um,
comic books that have soundtracks.
I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but after Fred was the one who introduced me to them, and the the character from issue 2 that he was talking about, who is this Germanic priestess, I completely 100%, it was an homage to the central singer in Highland. If you'll see when YouTube, and you'll see what I'm talking about, because
They have a great album called Lifa, Lifa,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. And you should really give it a go. Yeah, it's really great. And I'm just stoked that we can potentially have someone read this book and it sends them into an entire new direction where they start reading a book about history and about other cultures that have existed long before ours, and learn all kinds of fascinating things. I really think that people, they discredit the seed that a story like this can plant, because I know that there's no way this book would exist without reading Asterix and Obelix comics when I was a little kid. And my mom bought them for me to shut me up, legitimately.
Well, that's what they do, right? When you're
Yeah,
young.
so because
Yeah.
growing up in Belgium, the books that you get are those when you buy a Black Sad book and it's got that wider format. All the books like that in Europe have that format, and you could just peruse, and they're thick. They're like half-size trade paperbacks. And the Romans are bad. The Vikings are good. They're at war. What's going on? So it's silly and it's childlike, but I became fascinated with the idea of the Roman Empire. What makes them so bad? What makes them so good? And one of the things that's interesting too about European comics, one of the best-selling comics in Spain for decades was about a Lusitanian general that goes to war with Rome. So, maybe there'll be some crossover and we can go to a con in Spain and have really good
Angoulême in France,
Yeah, and drink wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
But I always love that idea. When you watch a film or read a book, a comic book, and it inspires you so much that you want to learn everything about the context that it describes, and it's just too bad that that's not more common. A lot of historical fiction is kind of frowned upon often. But I remember,
comics are superheroes.
Yeah,
there's a lot of superheroes and other stuff. Because if you think if I'm into a show or a documentary, I'm literally sitting there watching it with my iPad, and I'm Googling constantly. They'll say something and I'm Googling, and I'm like, oh, is that true? Is this true? That or if I see something that's inspiring to me for my story, I'm like, oh, got to bookmark that. Got to do that. And that's what I think would be great with comic, and that's what I'm talking about. This is it's not like your traditional book. It's by two passionate creators that have done their research, and that makes a world of difference in a story, especially if the readers know about it, or if they want to research it and realize, oh wow, this is based off of something real here and whatnot. So to inspire that would be a great kind of secondary reaction to the book.
I hope so.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do wonder if they'll like put this in school libraries. I think it's a little bit too extreme for school libraries.
I don't know.
But you never know.
You never know.
You
Now,
never know.
is this gonna be sold overseas?
We don't know. We do know that Jim was mentioning to us.
He's looking into it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we should hear soon, I believe.
I would love if it was. That would be pretty rad if we did manage to get ourselves overseas. I can't see this not doing well overseas. We actually talked to Jamie Calderon, I think his name is. He does this comic called Valois for Delacour in France. I'm a huge fan of his work. It's absolutely incredible. And I was kind of hitting him up to do a variant for us, trying to weasel our way in to see if we could get a contact there. But he said he knew. It was funny because my wife's French is way better than mine, because I have really let my French fall apart, but hers is still really good. And she ended up messaging back and forth with him for me so that she could properly explain the concept of what we wanted, but he's too busy to do a cover for us. He said that his his schedule that he has is very, very rigid. And in my head, I'm like, how rigid? Like us rigid or France rigid? Because I would imagine we have different standards of rigid. But okay, I'm not going to mess with your system because I'm a huge fan of what it is that you do, and the system works clearly.
Well, maybe if the success comes, he may change his tune. Maybe he'll be able to squeeze something into that schedule.
Yeah.
You never know. But guys, man, I really want to thank you guys for coming on and hanging out. The book looks awesome. I'll be tweeting it out and sharing it out on my social media on launch day. Hopefully everyone puts it on their pull list. And before we go, though, I mean, is there, Nick, is there anything that you're reading now, if you even have time in comics, that you think people should pick up?
Last few things I read was Jeff Smith's Razzle. I really enjoyed that.
Yep.
Rusty Brown by oh God, names on the tip of my tongue. Anyone?
No.
No.
I don't have you on that one.
It was really good. Fuck, man. And
right.
And
it's late.
Seth Clyde Fans was really good. Actually, I remember he released the first volume of that years ago, and honestly, I thought it was one of the finest graphic novels I've ever read in my life. And then he went on this long hiatus before releasing the completed version, which just came out I believe it was last winter or 2 years ago. It was right during COVID. It came out, and it was awesome. Chris Ware, Rusty Brown by Chris Ware.
Chris Ware. Okay.
Everyone should read this book. Absolutely. It's one of those.
You haven't said anything about this to me before. Now I feel like
I say this about you.
That's why I asked. I had that feeling.
I did. You just did not pay attention to me.
Okay. The Jeff Smith thing you have mentioned before. Yeah. That you did.
Have you read his TUCCI?
I did. I was one of his backers on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that.
We were just talking about that.
I have him coming on
2 days ago.
I have him coming on in like 2 weeks or something like that. I love Jeff. He's awesome.
Mention that we're fans.
Mention us. Tell him to get our book. We will.
Well, he's doing the new Bones stuff finally.
We've got a whole bunch of texts back and forth. My kids actually love Bone.
Yeah,
we were
my son
going to the
loves Bone
too. Yeah,
Bone
and I feel
here.
I don't feel like that's anything unusual, but it was cool getting the books from the library and having my kids
the reader version here, which is well read. I love his stuff, and he's an awesome dude. Awesome dude. Great
book.
I only picked up. I didn't even know about Razzle. I picked it up when I got the TUCCI copies.
Yeah.
And it came later, and I went through the whole thing in like 2 nights. It was a good book.
To be honest, I didn't know about it either until the camp. We had him on. He's really good. Well, Billy Tucci and all of them, they all kind of hit that independent scene at the same time in the early 90s. So, I've got the in with all those guys. And, talking to him, I didn't know about Razzle till he started telling me about TUCCI, and that they were talking to us should we crowdfund it? And we're like, yeah, you should crowdfund it. And they did gangbusters crowdfunding it, and also now it's out in general publications and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't know about Razzle, and then I got it through the campaign. I read it, and it was great.
We were talking about TUCCI because I'm kind of tinkering with this idea about a story about Neanderthals, and then I don't think that Nick and I have a normal creator relationship. We message all the time about silly nonsense that we would like to put in the book that we won't. But So I mentioned what I want to work on next and what I'm tinkering with, and he mentioned TUCCI. And now I am on this obsessive need to get it, and I've got an order on its way in from one of my buddies who works out west, who's found a copy for me. So I'm stoked.
Yeah, you're gonna like it.
Oh, sorry. With TUCCI, how he the preface is about it takes place during this era where there's multiple types of hominids. You had your Australopithecines, you had your I don't know. It's late. I don't know.
Early hominids, Australopithecines. I wanted to be a paleoanthropologist. You know that, right?
I'm sorry?
I wanted to do with my living, and then I couldn't afford university, and I went to broadcasting school like an idiot. That's what I should have done.
Then you went into TV and radio.
I like legitimately
They're parallels.
46 and 2 from Tool. That's like the song that about like the development of consciousness and culture. And when I remember when Anima came out, and I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I'm doing mushrooms and doing hallucinogens. That's what I got to do with my life. The state of consciousness, like all that nonsense. That's where I was. But then my father was like, I don't know if we can afford to help you go through 10 years of school, son. And I was like, okay, time to find a new career. But yeah, the books I'm reading, it's interesting. My youngest, my kids are all into like the bad guys and Dogman, and my youngest, who's 9, he's a serious guy. He's a serious man, and so he was like wanted to read something that was a little bit heavier, but he wanted to read. He said, he goes, I want to read. Do you have anything that's like violent that I won't get in trouble if I read? And pardon?
From hell.
Yeah, I gave him
Ruin his life.
Issue like the trade paperback 0 of Conan, the Dark Horse run with Carrie Nord and Kurt Busiek, and it's Born on the Battlefield, and it's Conan when he's a little kid, and he bit hard, and it's like he treats it like it's this chapter book, and he has he'll go to the bathroom and he'll have a toilet paper bookmark in it, and he'll like read like 10 pages at a time, and he'll come out like, I've been reading, Dad. I've been reading. It's like,
that's the best place to read.
Awesome, great. And so like him reading it made me want to reread it. So I'm also reading along with it so that I can ask him questions about things that he likes, things that he dislikes. But as far as things that I'm reading just for myself, like I just read the Tom King Vision series again, and I love it. I love it so much. And then I, of course, read like the Miracle Man stuff too. Mm-hmm. And there's a series of pages. There's a thing in the Miracle Man book that I actually messaged Mitch Gerrits about online because it made me so angry. And it's where they're at a playground and Mr. Miracle leaves the baby in the front end of a baby swing. It's going to topple. Nick knows what I'm talking about. Like the front end of the baby swing. It's going to flip right over. Baby's going to fall out. And I don't think that there's any series of panels in a comic that have stressed me out as much as watching this baby in the front. And he clearly knows he's in the wrong because the swing's tilted over like that. And the baby's going to flip right out and fall out of the swing. Stressed me out. I had to message him. I was mad about it. So that's what I've been reading the most. Yeah. Although the rest of my time has just been like writing. So my reading has been really cut down.
Oh, you know what else was really good? I picked up last holidays was the Martini compilation of Darwin Cook's Parker stories.
Oh yeah? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which was awesome.
Slayground, I think, is one of the most perfect comics I've ever read in my life. All of his Darwin Cook, and
what a good compilation. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I wish he was still around, man. I would love to chat with him.
Oh my God. And it's infuriating to me is I feel like I got to a point as a creator where I could talk to somebody and have something to say after his passing, and it infuriates me. And one of my closest friends is Jay Torres, who he tells a story about he was at a con tabling next to Darwin Cook, and people would come by and ask like, oh, is the artist here to sign? He goes, no, I'm just the writer. And he goes, somebody walked away, and he goes, Darwin Cook grabbed me and pulled me in, and don't ever degrade yourself as being just the writer. You created the story. And it's like all of the stories about Darwin Cook are very aggressive and harsh, but incredibly supportive and kind all at the same time.
Yeah. I hate to name drop again, but like Billy Tucci, Jimmy Palmiotti, all those guys, that they were all best friends. And that's why I get to hear these stories of when they're talking about him. And oh my God, I'm like, dude, he was just like, they're like, he was intense. Like he was intense, but I mean, his heart was gold. And, you know, he'd always have advice for people, this and that. It was just, it was a shame.
There's a really
Cancer's a
great,
bitch.
like that he writes the rear word in, what is it? The New Frontier.
Yeah.
And I always talk about how, and honestly, as a parent, it really hit home with me where he talks about this moment where growing up, like I think he lived around Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, right on the border with Buffalo.
Yep.
And there was this children's TV show that came in on the cable access channel from Buffalo about this guy who was broadcasting his show from a space station. And he talks about how his little brother was super excited about this show and that it was from a space station. And then he looks at his little brother and says, you know, it's in a TV studio. And he says, out of all the things he's done in his life, it's the only thing he regrets because he stole the magic from somebody. He took the magic away from them. And it's this very poignant reflection of childhood and something that we've all done. And how, as an adult, your perspective of you stole something, you know, you stole something from it. And I know it's not a comic book piece of writing, but I think it's one of the best pieces of writing I've ever heard a comic book creator put on paper because it's true. And I really think that all of us need to put in a little bit more effort of letting people hold on to something magical because life can be really shitty. And how dare you dump on something that somebody else loves and take that away from them? It's not your place. Let them like what they like and believe what they believe, you know? I'm really getting philosophical.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. I think there's too much of that in the world right now.
Yeah.
You know, everyone has an audience. Just let everyone enjoy what they like. And if you don't like it, you don't. That's the beauty of it, right? If I don't like a certain food, I don't have to eat it. If I don't like a certain show, I don't watch it.
Yeah.
You know, I like what I like. You know, there's no harm in that. But again, guys, I hope you guys would come on again. I had a great time chatting with you guys. Best of luck with this book, this series. Again, it is beautiful. I think it definitely needs to be thrown into the nominations for an Eisner. Well, let's see after I read the rest of the issues. But, you know, just right off the bat, though, really one of the most beautiful comics that I have seen in a very, very long time. And I really recommend, just because I have read it, you know, if you can, reach out to your local comic shop, get it put on your pull list, check it out. You know, check out the first issue. You're definitely going to want to get issue 2 because they leave you on a heck of a cliffhanger. But really, guys, great stuff. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope you know, if I ever send an invite, you guys pop back on and chat some comics with me.
Absolutely,
that'd be awesome. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, and before any conventions coming up for you guys? Anything where people can you know, meet you in person?
There's the Toronto Con next weekend. I'll be there.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually not doing many cons because everyone in my circle and family and all that decided let's get married this year. So I won't be at another show till San Diego.
We'll be at San Diego.
Yes.
Yeah. We're not going to have a table, but we'll be there in person.
We're signing at the Image booth. I know that we've got
cool.
some signing
awesome
at the Image booth.
Yes.
So we'll be there. We're sharing a room. It's going to be amazing.
Yes. And we'll be
one queen bed.
Yeah.
Head to toe, gentlemen. Head to toe.
And then we'll be in New York as well as Fan Expo Toronto. So yeah, we'll be there.
Well, hopefully I'll bump into you guys at a couple of those shows. And also too, before I go, I don't want to forget, where can we'll start with you, Nick. Where can people follow you on social media?
Right now, Instagram and Facebook. I've been planning to get an ArtStation page up for a while, but I'm you know, laziness and getting pages done has been taking up my time. But yeah,
work,
all that stuff. Yeah, but yeah, right now, Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Fred?
At fearless_Fred on Twitter and Instagram. The best spot. Someone popped up a message saying Fearless Fred. Yes. At fearless_Fred is the best place to find me on Twitter and Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. I have a Facebook page, but I'm not super active, which is why I didn't catch that comment from Jim and now I feel like an asshole for not.
He's very active on Facebook.
Yes, he is.
He is
and
very active.
And the thing is he's got an Instagram page, and I tag him in everything. And I don't think he's ever responded to anything. But he's even said, he's like, I don't touch any of that other stuff. I'm only on Facebook. But yeah, at fearless_Fred. And you can find me there. And I'm very, very active because for my work, I kind of have to be. So yeah, I'm always there.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. Again, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. We got a bunch more shows lined up next week. So keep your eyes peeled to social media, and we'll start throwing up some more promos. Gentlemen, have a great night. Good luck with everything. I love the book, and I'm excited for issue 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yep, me too.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having
have
me.
a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Good night.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.